GPT-5 is here, but will it live up to the hype? The answer might surprise you. So this is all according to OpenAI. Let's start with the first most important question. What has changed here? Well, according to OpenAI, GPT-5 is the smartest, fastest, most useful model, yet with thinking built in, and it's available to everyone. And so, what are the new models that were put out with this GPT-5 release? Well, if you head over to the platform portion of OpenAI, their developer side, you can come in and check out all the models here in their docs. So it looks like there are 4 new models. We have GPT-5, GPT-5 Mini, GPT-5 Nano, and then you also have access to their chat model, which is just going to be a fine-tuned version of these 3 models. So essentially there's 3 new models, but let's just get into these models as well. What do these models do? So for starters, do any of these models generate video? So the answer to that question is no. So GPT-5, we can see just outputs text, and the same with GPT-5 Mini, it's just outputting text. And the same with GPT-5 Nano, it's just outputting text. Can these models read through video? Can they take a video input and output text? The answer to that is also no. You can see that here. It just takes text and image for all 3. So GPT-5 Mini, it's just taking text and image. GPT-5 Nano is just taking text and image. But can these models take images? Yes, they all can. We just saw that. So they can take text and image inputs, and they can output text. That is what all 3 models will do. What do these models cost? So GPT-5, we can see costs $1.25 for input tokens, or per million input tokens, and $10 per million output tokens. And then GPT-5 Mini is going to be less expensive, 25 cents per million and $2 per million. And GPT-5 Nano, 5 cents per million input, 40 cents per million output. So this is very comparable to GPT 4.1 and that release, which happened a few months ago. So GPT 4.1, GPT 4.1 Mini, and GPT 4.1 Nano, very, very comparable to this GPT-5 release. Now, how do these models actually perform in the real world setting? So it's still very early on their release for us to figure this out, but we're just going to take the experts in this field. So let's head on over and watch a video from Michael Truel of Cursor. So this video was put out by OpenAI just earlier today. Let's watch it and see what Michael thinks of the model and what it can do inside Cursor.
What was the first experience you had with GPT-5?
When you use GPT-5, you feel the intelligence aspect shine through. It's fast, that it can do things like entire tasks interactively, like refactors, to a degree that feels like it hasn't been possible before. We had run into a pernicious bug in our dev build that affected performance, and used GPT-5 to scope out the initial investigation. Was shocked at the intelligence of the model. If you go back before the era of LLMs, what would have taken someone weeks of onboarding to a codebase? GPT-5 did in a couple of minutes.
That is just a wild fact.
Yes.
So if you just caught that, he just said what would have taken weeks of onboarding someone and getting them in your team to do the work can be done in minutes with GPT-5. We're just going to cut ahead a little bit and go to a more interesting scene. So here's a wireframe that Truel feeds into the GPT-5 model inside of Cursor. Later on in the video, you'll see that this is Cursor compiling it.
We have been using GPT-5 as our daily driver. When one uses it as a daily driver within Cursor, that's for things like finding bugs, that's for things like planning out a PR, that's for things like in cases where, a feature is pretty scoped, actually
and this is the app.
Correction ability.
Powered. It just removes
That's the app that they built with it. So if you just stop and take a look at it, it looks pretty good. But to be honest, I'm not really convinced. And that goes without saying at this point. We've all seen so many of these demos that build something that looks nice but doesn't actually work. So it's really hard to say until you actually go into this sort of app and you play around with it. So let's see what else they have to say.
removes this whole barrier to entry.
The correction ability, both from doing things like getting lints for the code and running the code, but then also just from human instructions, has improved a ton. Used to be they would go down a path and then they would be stuck in that rabbit hole, and it would be hopeless.
Yes.
And GPT-5 can correct itself, even for onboarding. It's kind of amazing when you have someone new onboarding to a code base.
Yes.
Just the power of asking the AI, where things are, how things work, and the speed at which you can come on board.
What's been the most surprising thing to you about GPT-5 so far?
The intelligence or the speed. GPT-4 comes out. GPT-4 is really exciting. It's a little bit slow. GPT-5 packs in a ton of intelligence to something that's really fast and fast enough that you can work with it interactively. GPT-5 is really good at detecting bugs, actually, and detecting thorny bugs. When you give it a lot of detail up front, it is shocking.
Now that's pretty interesting, and that'll be something that we'll see be borne out over time is how are things that are happening that aren't so visible up front with the model, such as detecting thorny bugs, how are they being done behind the scenes, and is the model becoming more efficient? So interesting to hear him say that.
Really good at actually grokking that and understanding all of that detail. It doesn't have just like some kind of like fuzzy, smooth pass over all the instructions that you're giving it. It actually understands what you're saying, which is a big step forward.
Code migrations are kind of a killer feature for the enterprise. That code migrations are one of those things that are so expensive for companies to do that there's like, if you lower the barrier to that, there will be just 10x more of them that happen. It's not just about the raw model capability, but about surfaces like Cursor that actually deliver value to the developer community.
We have been surprised at its ability on real hard refactors that require trying things, correcting oneself, working across many files over a long period of time. But I think that the magic really happens when you're going about your day as normal, and then you can do your work 20% faster immediately. 30% can be delegated to an AI.
I think that just shows that we're starting to be able to solve really hard problems, right? And have AIs that go off and think not just for minutes, but think for hours. And of course, where we want to go is think for days, think for months, in order to solve problems that are worthy of that level of waiting. When they're quite incapable, you really have to do a lot of work to bring the tool to the model. But if the model's able to use a browser, it's able to use a desktop, suddenly integration is just a very different kind of thing.
Yeah, it feels like the start of the whole software development lifecycle changing. To go from this world where you're working one-on-one with kind of an autocomplete system that can be really powerful for programmers and one-on-one with a local agent to one where you're working with multiple in parallel and orchestrating them all and having that be a fun, productive, fast development experience. So I'm really excited for a world where there's like a heads-up display, and it's like a little bit, I mean, one way to think about it is like it's a little bit more like an RTS where, yeah, you've got all your kind of parallel agents going, working alongside each other, and like understanding what the status is of each of those, being able to jump in, gain context quickly, intervene. Programming is this human compilation step of, what's in your head, you know what you want to see on the screen, and then you have to go turn it into formal programming languages. And to the extent we can kind of remove the like weird jump through 10,000 hoops human compilation step and just have it be about the thing that you want to show up and how you want it to work.
The promise of computers is to empower humans, right? So it's like the human wants to do a thing, and now there's a helper. But the whole history of computers has been the human contorting ourselves to the machine,
Yes.
right? Like going and writing assembly code, and
Yes.
we've moved further up that layer of
Yes.
abstraction. But AI is like finally fulfilling the promise of what computers were meant to be the whole time.
It has always felt like, or it's
And we're just going to skip ahead here.
It's more about what do I want to show up, make it happen quickly, and keep going.
The amount of progress in this field that is still possible. We are at the 1%, the 0.1% of where we will be. It's been really great working with your team, but I think really makes models like GPT-5 shine. It's in interactive experiences like Cursor. Michael?
Thank you for having me.
So my thoughts on this. Truel Cursor certainly has an incentive to sell OpenAI and to sell GPT-5 because he is going to be running Cursor on OpenAI and the other models, but especially OpenAI. And so he has an incentive to sell it. So to me, I see that as more of a sales video than anything else. I'm not particularly swayed that this model is going to be all that much better, though he does say some things that are interesting and some things that I will be on the lookout for as I am running this through my own IDE and just on the lookout for things that small improvements. But on the whole, I would say do not believe any of the hype that you come across that says this model is going to change the game, revolutionize everything. That just isn't what we see. We went through the documents of OpenAI. We've watched what the experts have to say, and it seems pretty obvious from this release that this is not going to be a game-changing model. It won't be as big a flop as GPT 4.5, but I also think there isn't as much hype around it, and OpenAI has learned their lesson with hyping up things that don't deserve hype. So as you move forward, keep going about your business. This model, I'm sure, will do some things better, but on the whole, it will be business as usual for this world, which is slowly being overtaken by AI. That's all for today. See you in the next one.